Welcome back to Limbus Company, New Identity Overview and Patch Note Analysis. This time, we've got the second update for Season 5, and of course we're getting Fanghunt Honglu and Barber Outis, alongside a couple of interesting changes they're making to just battle system in general, just for simplicity's sake and to work well with what they've got planned. And also, of course, we're going to be getting a set of stuff from the Battle Pass, although we don't have the breakdowns for those beforehand. So let's get into it. And of course, we'll start with the 2-star, right? Fanghunt Honglu.
혈기분들은 악독하면서 끈질겨요. 그러니까 제대로 준비해야겠죠? 혈기도 인간이라 생각하는 사람도 있어요. 인간이 아니었다면 진작에 머리에서 처리하지 않았겠냐고. 하지만 기준이야 몰라도 저희는 혈기가 인간이 아니라고 생각한답니다. 그들은 박멸해야 할 사냥감일 뿐이죠. 몇 마리 놓쳤지만 승리했으니 문제 없어요. 도망친 혈기분들도 지금쯤 두려움을 떨고 있겠죠?
Fanghunt Office Fixer Honglu is a 2-star for, of course, Fanghunt Office. Might be the only Fanghunt Office rep we end up getting, but if so, still pretty cool looking, that's for sure, so it's better than getting nothing. It's a Rupture unit. It's a pretty standard Rupture unit, that's for sure. We'll have to see how good he is. Honglu has a pretty good track record with 2-stars, and Rupture it's a pretty good track record with 2-stars, so this could be a really good idea. And since we're also going to be getting Honglu's Lasso this week, that's probably going to be Rupture related as well, so there's going to be some sort of synergy there, that's for sure. And there's also some funny anti-Blood Fiend stuff for this idea, of course, as you'd expect. And also, I'll just mention this now, and it's the text in the top right, it wasn't translated for some reason, it's just saying that stuff is subject to change, as they always do. But yeah, going into the skills, very normal seeming Rupture unit, that's for sure. Skill 1, Slam, 2 coin, Blunt, Gluttony skill, this guy is entirely blunt. If target has Rupture, gain coin power, and then inflict Rupture, and on heads hit even more Rupture on heads hit. So yeah, just a very Rupture potency heavy skill 1, that's for sure. Probably pretty good with in Mirror Dungeon with stuff like Thunder Branch, but otherwise just seems like pretty solid. I mean, it's a skill 1 that's at least 4 Rupture potency inflictions, so I mean that's nice if nothing else, I guess. Not fully sure. But it's just kind of a skill 1, it's not something too special. Then the skill 2, Bone Crusher, 2 coin Pride Blunt skill. Target has X plus Rupture, gain coin power. And of course, as we're getting very accustomed to seeing, if target has a certain amount of Rupture and Rupture count, skill does not inflict Rupture, but gains coin power. This is very interesting, that's for sure, because this uses the same oh, the target has a certain amount of Rupture and Rupture count. It's probably going to be a 15 Rupture potency and 3 Rupture count instead. But instead of making the unit Rupture neutral, instead makes him stronger. So it seems like he might end up being a very another very Rupture count reduction unit. However, this skill seems like it's really good for Rupture count infliction if the target doesn't have Rupture. So this might be a really good Rupture count setup skill. We'll have to see. Also, if target is a Blood Fiend or a Blood Bag, gain more coin power as well. Of course, there's going to be stuff like that in this guy's kit. He hunts Blood Fiends, that's what he does. Clash Wind, inflict Rupture count with the first coin on hit, and even more on heads hit. That's at least 3 Rupture counts, so it's at least Rupture positive no matter what, assuming you Clash Wind and hit heads with the first one. Potentially more if any of these numbers are more than a 1, which we'll have to see. But of course, if you're using the skill while the target already has a lot of Rupture, you're not going to be able to use it to maintain Rupture. Although this is Honglu we're talking about, though, so he's got something like Dimension Shredder, and maybe his Lasso ends, depending on how his Lasso is designed to work. But if nothing else, Dimension Shredder is for Rupture count next turn, so he can always use that. We'll have to see. This guy does fuel it pretty well, since it's, it requires 3 Gluttony and 3 Pride to use his Dimension Shredder. So there does have some sort of synergy there. Team chances Lassos like a Zan or something. But also the second coin, Rupture Potency, and inflicts HP healing down next turn. Of course they're doing it right. They did the same thing with Multicrack Heathcliff, right? Blood Fiends heal up a lot, so let's give the IDs that are good against them HP healing down. This situation it makes more sense because this guy's, like a actual Blood Fiend hunter. He does this for a living. No clue how big of a difference it makes. It's never felt super palpable, but if we end up in a fight where that's like Cassetti at some point, where the enemy's going to heal up a lot, And I mean, I think there's a decent chance that happens. Could be nice to reduce the healing at least a little bit. We'll have to see how useful that ends up being. But then a skill 3, a Cheerful Hunt's End, 3 coin Blunt Wrath skill. You also notice the Wrath icon looks a little bit different now, and that's because they're making some changes to how some of these skill icon stuff works. We'll get to that a little bit later once we look at the actual patch notes, but it may look a little weird, and that's because they are changing it a bit to make it a bit more visually distinctive between skills 1s, 2s, and 3s. But moving on to the actual skill, target has a certain amount of rupture, gain coin power. If the target has a certain amount of rupture and rupture count, does not inflict rupture count, but gains coin power once again. That sort of thing. And if the target is a blood fiend or a blood bag, gain even more coin power. Yeah. It's similar things to skill 2 in that front. Clash Wind inflict rupture count, and then the first 2 coins inflict rupture potency on heads hit. And then the third coin, if the target has a certain amount of rupture potency, or if the target is less than Y% HP, reuse this coin. It becomes a 4 coin. Given how this has multiple coin power gainers, gaining it based on how much rupture potency the target has, or if the target, and then more on top of if they have a certain amount of rupture potency and count, and then even more if it's a blood fiend or a blood bag, you can gain at least 3 coin power on this skill, right? We'll have to see what the base is. It might be like a pretty low base, like a... I'm not sure, maybe it'll be like a 6+4 or something, right? But even then, it feels like it'll be a lot of power once you can get, that coin power stacking. Of course, the Blood Fiend thing is kind of out of your control. You just need to have the enemies be what you want. But there's a lot of Blood Fiend enemies right now for the Kanto, so it works out pretty well. And also the fact that, this reuses either Rupture Potency or less than percentage HP. So it's similar to Shank for Ting Ting Honglu, right? Against an abnormality or something where the part's broken and is at 0 HP, it counts as them being less than its HP number, so you get to reuse this coin. Honglu really likes reuse coins. I've kind of definitely been noticing that. They give him a lot of coin reuse identities, even across his 2 stars, which is funny. Coin reuse always feels great to use, just because, it's stronger. Seems like it might be a strong skill. We'll have to see exactly how it goes, but he's a very standard rupture unit, as far as we can tell. Moving on to his defensive skill, Emergency Styptics, combo start, lose bleed potency. It's just a Wrath Guard that makes you lose some bleed. Can be nice against Blood Fiends. It's similar to the Molar Bowworks IDs, where the guard skill is just supposed to work just to kind of somewhat counteract the specific enemies they're made for, right? And losing bleed potency isn't the worst effect, that's for sure. If you can get your bleed potency down, even if you have high count, it's not going to be as big of a deal. It depends on how much bleed potency it is, and also, of course, there's going to be plenty of times you're using this guy and you're not going to get any bleed at all. Maybe it'll make it better for, solos or something, though, right? Not as big of a worry if you get, K-Corp, or if you get N-Corp or something like that. N-Corp or, Kurokuma, or one of those factions can stack a lot of bleed, because that can definitely happen in Mirror Dungeon a lot. Then his passive, How to Hunt Cheerfully. If the target is a blood bag, blood fiend, or if the target has an armor rupture, deal more damage. I like how they're doing it with stuff like this where, of course, he gains benefits against blood fiends, but if they're not a blood fiend, instead he gets the benefit just as the target has a certain amount of rupture. I think that's a decent enough way to work around doing it, right? I like that. And then on skill use, the target has bleed, inflict rupture on hit. Yeah, so once again, just kind of counteract being hit by bleed to get more rupture potency to work well against blood fiends. Especially given how blood fiends seem to have a lot of unopposable attacks that inflict bleed. It just fits like that. And a support passive, Blood Fiend Hunting Manual Styptics, when out with the highest of bleed potency and count, loses bleed count. This is probably really good in solos, right? Bleed is not going to be nearly enough of an issue if you can have someone in the back who can reduce bleed. It might be Wrath Resonance or something, though. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not going to constantly trigger. But it seems like a good way to deal with bleed. You could, just make sure you have them if you're going into, a bleed-heavy floor as a support passive, and then just not have to worry about it nearly as much, right? And when ally with the fastest speed hits enemy with rupture, inflict defense level down. Nice. A little bit of defense level down is good, and it being given to the ally with the fastest speed means it's going to be pretty nice. It makes me feel like this might be a resonance passive in general, but it's also probably just not a lot of defense level down. Overall, yeah, like I was saying before, kind of relatively standard rupture AD compared to what we've got in the past, but a standard rupture AD could be what we need. It seems like he might have decent, rolls and stuff. He's got a lot of coin power gain shenanigans going on here, which also, something that's nice. And it may be a 2-star, but it's a Honglu 2-star. Honglu's got stuff like Hook and like even like Kurokumo, like 2 stars that hit well above what you'd think they would as a 2-star. Yeah, he seems like he'll be pretty cool, but enough stalling with the 2-star.
잘 왔군. 이제 진짜 치장이란 게 무엇인지 직접 보여주도록 하지. 기대하노라. 싹둑 싹둑. 거스러미 같은 찰조각은 전부 잘라내야지. 카니발에 어울리지 않는 손님도 마찬가지야. 귀퉁이 천만도 못하니. 퍼레이드는 문제 없었지만 몇몇 복장불량이 뿐. 내 의상이 그런 식으로 보여지는 건 용납 못한다고 말했을 텐데. 이곳이 내 집이야. 집으로 돌아가던 길이었는데. 아니, 여기에 내 가족이 있고 어버이와 자식들이 있어.
Yeah, Barber Outis, the Barber of La Manchaland, is the 3-star Outis is getting here, you know. Some joke I could insert some joke here about how Outis is getting a lot of stuff as of late, but I mean, it's fair enough in this situation, right? I don't think it's that big of a deal. This is our first Blood Fiend ID, and it seems to be setting the precedent for how Blood Fiend IDs are going to work from now on, with Blood Feast. This is something the actual Blood Fiends in Kanto 7 have, and the general idea is all Blood bleed damage dealt in this zone is stored, and can effectively be consumed by any Blood Fiends to gain certain benefits. Now, what it says by a zone might seem a little weird, but basically, it means if you're in a fight where the background changes. This gets talked a little bit more in depth when we get into the actual patch notes stuff itself, but the difference between, like in chain battles, it's one background, just more things, but with multi-wave fights, it's different backgrounds you go to between different zones. That's a big difference. So if you go, it basically means, but if you go between acts, or not between acts, that's not what it's called. If you go between waves, then Blood Feast seems to be drained, except for, you know, certain things. But that's the big idea, right? It basically lasts as long as you're on the field, like a single combat type deal. I don't know, it's shared between all characters, and interestingly enough, new to the actual ID Blood Fiend stuff, if there's a higher kindred among the allies who also consume Blood Feast in the same turn, this unit cannot consume Blood Feast until that ally consumes it first. So, when we get, like, a second kindred ID, when we get a second kindred ID, they need to consume Blood Feast first before they allow for the third to consume it. So it makes it sound like it's going to be like turn start order type of thing, right? Like Blood Feast is always prioritized to higher kindreds. So if there's only 30 Blood Feast like available and the second kindred is using something that requires all 30, then they're going to get all 30, and if Outis wanted any of the Blood Feast, she doesn't get any because she's a lower kindred level, right? That sort of deal. So it makes sense, you know, the stronger of their allies get it the first. That sort of thing. But yeah, this seems like it's going to be the bit for all Blood Fiends going forwards, and it's in certain mechanics and stuff. Now, of course, the main thing that Blood Feast does for Barber Outis is Blood-Tinged Scissor Blades. You can see some of her skills consume Blood Feast in order to gain some of this skill, and it's going to just give her a bunch of benefits. Blood-Tinged Scissor Blades, if it works similar to how it worked for Barber itself, it can go up to 30. From 1 to 10, it's level 1 and it doesn't do too much. From levels like 11 to 20, it becomes level 2. You gain offense level up and defense level down for every X stack. And at level 21 through 30, you just gain offense level for every stack, so it loses the debuff, and it's also more offense level. It's a little bit different functionally from how the Barbers work, so maybe the numbers might not be the same. We don't know the numbers yet. But basically, a lot of her skills are going to consume Blood Feast to gain Scissor Blades, that sort of thing. And looking at these skills, skill 1 Sewing, 2 coin Gluttony / skill, heal on hit with the skill, heal percentages of the HP damage dealt. This is going to be normal for Blood Fiend stuff. She's got a little bit of self-damage, so it might be useful. Consume up to X Blood Feast and gain Blood-Tinged Scissor Blades for every Blood Feast consume. If the unit did not consume Blood Feast, gain Bleed Count instead. So you need to be careful if you do not get enough Blood Feast. She will get a lot of like self-bleed count, self-bleed potency. She does have a lot of healing to offset it, but depending on the numbers, it could be rough, especially in fights where you're getting hit by bleed anyways, because she doesn't have like innate bleed protection or anything. Although she does like getting bleed to a degree because, well, that game it's more Blood Feast, since Blood Feast is bleed to allies or enemies alike, right? Gain coin power for every bleed on target, and then both coins inflict bleed and inflict bleed counter the target has sewing target, which is a status effect. You knew this idea as well. They just it makes enemies just take more damage for every bleed on self. It's set up by her skill 2, and is reduced on turn end. Not expires on turn end, so it's probably going to be like an Echoes of the Manor type thing, where like it lasts for like 2-3 turns, like max maybe, that sort of thing. I'm not fully sure. Maybe you can keep on spamming skill 2s and stacking it. It's not specified, so I don't know. But speaking of her skill 2, Scission, 3 coin, Lust / skill, heal percentage damage dealt, consume Blood Feast and gain Blood Scissor Blazes, gain Bleed Potency if that unit does not consume Blood Feast. So if you skill 1 to skill 2 without enough Blood Feast, it definitely seems like you might be able to get a lot of bleed damage on self, which doesn't mean you can get a lot of Blood Feast. In general, you're going to want to be using this idea on a bleed team, so should be good. It should be easy enough to stack a bunch of Blood Feast, but if you have a second kindred or higher ID eventually, that also could prove to be an issue, since they may just take the Blood Feast for themselves and leave Outis to start. Gain coin power if target is bleed, and then both of the first 2 coins are bleed potency inflicting, and inflict even more if target has sewing target, and third coin inflicts sewing target. So yeah, not any bleed count on this skill 2, but a lot of bleed potency, and it's also our sewing target setup. We don't have to see how much damage you can get from sewing target, but who knows? Its main benefit seems to be a lot of like conditionals for Barber Outis. It'll probably be something like the Uninvited, where it's like, oh, 20% more damage max. Still nice, but like not like super insane. But still just really solid to have in general. Kind of like Gaze like. Moving on to her skill 3, I'll make you a new dress. This is a really interesting one. 4 coin Wrath / skill, heal percentage damage dealt. Now this one doesn't gain Scissor Blades or have like take Blood Feast in that regard. Instead, gain attack weight based on how much Blood Tinged Scissor Blades you have. And you're also going to consume Blood Tinged Scissor Blades based on how much attack weight is gained. So you may lose like a decent chunk of it depending on how that goes. Target has certain amount of bleed, gain coin power, gain clash power for every bleed on the target. And of course, yeah, consume Scissor Blades for every attack weight gain. Target is killed, increase Blood Feast, and regain half of the Scissor Blades consumed by the skills. So if you kill at least one, it's a mass stack. It's target, so it probably means the primary one here, but it could mean anyone, right? I'm not fully sure. And target is sewing target, increase Blood Feast gain further, and Blood Tinged Scissor Blades further. That's all, you know, the on-kill conditional stuff, right? But yeah, so there's going to be a lot of like potential stuff there. And of course, you can see your coins. For the first 3, it's just bleed potency, and then the 4th one, deal more damage at 10 plus Scissor Blades, and at 20 plus, do even more damage, assumably. We're not fully sure on the numbers there, but that's how it'll likely work to that degree. Just a very damaging skill. It's an attack weight skill, of course. It's kind of funny to think about how we don't really have a lot of attack weight skill 3s. It's usually skill 2s. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple attack weight skill 3s for IDs, like stuff like, of course, Regret Faust and like Magic Bullet Outis, but it's more frequently skill 2s than anything else, it feels like. But funny to see a skill 3 that's just an absolute like demolisher. You'll need to have your Scissor Blades built up, so you'll need to use some skill 1, skill 2s to set it up before you can actually get it off, but it'll do a lot of damage, I'm sure. Moving on to her defensive skill, it's just a normal counter. The actual Barber had a power counter, but they just gave this one a normal counter, which, fair enough. Power counters can be pretty strong. Gain more power based on Scissor Blades, gain coin power based on bleed on self, and inflict bleed count. I'm not sure how good that bleed on self is going to be, especially because it's coin power on a counter, but like, I guess you just got hit, so you might have been hit by the bleed, right? Stuff like that. I don't know. It's not something you want to use too frequently, I'm sure, but it is a bleed count inflicting counter, so can definitely help out if you're a little worried about bleed situations. Then her normal passive, Wrong Costume, Clash against Sewing Target, gain Clash Power, yeah, so she just gains more Clash Power against Sewing Target. On hit, deal more Doomer damage for every total Blood Fiend consumed by self. This is also something the actual Kanto Blood Fiends have. You can see how much Blood Fiend they've consumed in total as a status effect under them. So she just deals more damage based on the more of it she's consumed. Think similar to how like charge potency works for all the IDs that have it, right? It's a stack of how much charge they've spent. So basically, total Blood Feast consumed is just how much Blood Feast they've spent. And she just gains more damage based on it. And also more damage or bleed on the target. But then her support passive, really interesting name, Don Quixote Hard Blood Axe Arts 8 Scissors. And the fastest speed, heals on kill, and inflicts bleed count whenever inflicting potency for the next turn. So this just seems to be like a really good support passive. It might be like Wrath, or it might be Wrath Resonance or something for how good this is, but maybe not too since it's only on kill, right? If the fastest speed ally gets a kill, they heal and just get more bleed count next turn. The name especially makes me think it's the kind of support passive you're going to want to use for, like, the big Don Quixote ID whenever we get it, just to make her stronger. And in solos in general, you can, like, guarantee that it's going to the person you want it to go to. But in general, just more bleed count, infliction, bleed potency seems really nice. It might be capped, like, 3 per turn or something. I don't know if it'll be, like, uncapped, like something like BL, like Yisong support passive is, but pretty good either way. But yeah, we love 2-page ideas. She seems pretty interesting. A fairly, like, simple gimmick. They didn't really need to make this, like, a 2-pager, but I mean, they needed to for Blood Feast, right? If not for Blood Feast, they could have definitely fit everything onto 1 page, and they probably could have fit everything on 1 page anyways. They did that for, like, Blade Lineage Merceau, but it's just easier to split into 2. That's how it goes. We'll have to see how she goes. She's the first Blood Fiend ID we're getting, and we're obviously going to be getting more. We're going to have to see how well these synergize. But Blood Feast in general seems really interesting. It's a cool way to, like, incentivize running full bleed teams with these guys just because, well, they can just straight up consume the bleed inflicted on allies and enemies to their own benefit. Moving on to the actual patch notes now, of course. We're going to see what is being said here. New target extraction, new identities, normal stuff there. And of course, we're getting the next 20 levels of the Battle Pass. So this is up to level 40, and it'll unlock both lassos for us, Honglu and Faust's lassos, with Honglu's lasso probably synergizing with his new Fanghunt ID to some degree. They're probably both going to be Rupture-ish, but might have different gimmicks, right? Lasso makes me sound like it's good. It's going to be like bind focused to some degree, which is nice. Bind can be good to have, and there might be more to it. We're not fully sure. They don't show us that sort of thing beforehand, so we'll just have to see when the update comes out. New XP and thread luxations are being added. Upon clearing certain stages, you get the new XP and new thread luxations. XP luxation 7 is gotten from main story 7-26, and thread luxation 4 is gotten from main story 7-34. So we know there's at least 34 nodes in the Kanto update, I guess, right? It left off at 19, I think, right? So we know there's at least 14 or 15 nodes technically. We'll have to see exactly what happens there. And also XP Luxation 7 has the different categories. You can see it on screen there, right? We can see it's a level 49. It's /week in that form, but it'll switch each day, with Sunday giving you your choice by the sound of it. But yeah, so there's a little bit more variety in the stages with that sort of stuff. It'll be nice to get, you know, in a stronger way to get XP Excavation tickets. Skill icon visibility improvements. This is what I was talking about earlier. You could see this with like the skill 3s and stuff. They're making the adjustments to skills, borders and stuff to make them a little more obvious what is a skill 3, what's a skill 2, what's a skill 1. Because enemy skills also are categorized into skill 1, 2, 3. Now they're not set in the same way where they've got like a rotation or anything like that. But their skills, their stronger skills have, you know, the funnier borders. And this way the color just kind of matches more. So we'll see how big of an effect this is. We can only see it for, like, some of the skills here, so we're not fully sure how it looks like for all of them. We'll see how it looks in-game before I can make, like, a good opinion on it. But more easier readability is good. Also seems like they might be preparing for this sort of thing for, like, an ID with, like, multiple Lust or multiple Wrath skills. Which makes sense. We haven't got an ID like that since BL Merceau, and that was in Season 3, so I get to see some repeats in Infinity stuff. And stage progression changes for previous stages 2+ waves. They're actually changing a lot of past levels in order to being enemy reinforcement based, right? So anytime the background doesn't change effectively when you switch between acts, they're going to just make it reinforcements instead. This ties into the whole Blood Feast thing, right? Different zones. If the people are physically going to a different background, then yeah, of course it shouldn't be reinforcements, it's going to a different area. But if it's still the same background, instead of like making your like characters like move and then you're just in the same spot, something like that, they're just going to make it so it's just reinforcement base as well. That's a cool thing to do. We'll have to see how much that affects, but that's going to affect like a lot of main story stuff. So very different experience for people from now on. Yeah, it says certain stages that have singing ingredient experience is fully changed by map, making it brief forms. Okay, so we'll see how they do it there, right? A lot of variants. Bunch of bug fixes. They're changing, so you may have noticed last week that the lasso egos were called Snare in the Battle Pass, but that was a translation issue. It's supposed to be lassos. Yeah, they've changed it back to lasso now. A bunch of other various shenanigans here and there. That sort of thing. Yeah. And, oh yeah, and now you can select up to 10 announcers, which apparently was a change they made this week. I didn't even know that. Apparently they made it so you can select up to 10 announcers now, so instead of having to only choose 5 of the announcers, you can have up to 10. It's a lot of announcers, that's for sure, and you might only want to hear, like, newer ones, and you might want to turn it off, but for some of them, but that's nice. A little bit more variety in announcer stuff, that's cool. Funny that that's something from last week, though. And, of course, 300 Lunacy, as you like to see. But yeah. A lot of stuff going on here. The new IDs seem very cool. I like Honglu being a bit more of a standard ID, not like any super unique bits to him. I think that's cool. That's how a lot of 2-stars are generally done. It's unfortunate that this might be all we get for Fanghunt office. This might be our Romero ID, or we might not get a Romero ID, depending on how things go. We're not fully sure what Romero's position is. He might have still been a generic fixer, but he seemed to be leading the office to some degree. Who knows, though? We'll have to see what actually happens in Kanto 7 Part 2, which is coming out with this update. So that'll be fun. But anyways, that'll be all for this time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!